When a system designed to protect you decides you're no longer its problem, it doesn't just let you go, it ejects you. For my sister and me, that day came disguised as a 16th birthday and a thin manila envelope. But what we found on the other side of that institutional door wasn't just freedom. It was a legacy buried in dirt and secrets. This is the story of how we were kicked out, and how a locked room we found beneath a collapsing stable didn't just give us a place to live, it gave us back our family. Before we get into it, if you've ever felt lost or abandoned by the very people who were supposed to be there for you, you're not alone. The air in Mr. Henderson's office always smelled like stale coffee and regret. It was a smell I had come to associate with my entire life for the past 9 years. He slid the envelope across the scratched surface of his desk, a practiced, weary motion. It stopped just short of my fingers. I didn't move to take it. My sister, Maya, who was 14 and all sharp angles and silent observation, shifted in the plastic chair beside me. Her knee pressed against mine, a tiny, grounding point of contact in a world designed to make us float away. "So, that's it?" I said. My voice sounded thin, younger than the 16 years I was claiming today. 16. The magic number that meant the state of Oregon was officially preparing my exit papers. Mr. Henderson sighed, a sound that rustled the tower of files teetering precariously on the corner of his desk. He was a man made of tired gestures. "It's not it, Chloe. It's a transition. The property your maternal grandmother, Eleanor Vance, left in her will has officially transferred to your trust. As you are now of legal age to be a primary trustee, the state's guardianship is complicated." "You're kicking us out," Maya said. It wasn't a question. Her voice was flat, devoid of the tremor in mine. She had a way of cutting through the bureaucratic fog. "The foster system is overburdened," he said, not to us, but to the water-stained ceiling tile above my head. "And you have a viable alternative, a resource. Most kids in your situation don't have that." A resource. That's what it was to him. An asset on a balance sheet. To us, it was a ghost. A grandmother we barely remembered. A woman who'd faded into a handful of fractured, sun-drenched memories from before our parents' accident. Before the group homes. Before the constant, grinding feeling of being temporary. After our parents died, she was supposed to be our guardian. But the courts were told she was unwell, unstable, unable to care for 2 young children. So we were swept into the system, and she became a series of unanswered Christmas cards, and eventually, just a name on a legal document. A name that now held the deed to a place called Blackwood Creek. "The property is in significant disrepair, I'm told," Mr. Henderson continued, pulling his gaze back down. "And there are back taxes, several years' worth. The state's recommendation is that you liquidate, sell the land. The acreage alone is worth a considerable sum, even with the delinquent taxes settled. It would set you both up. An apartment, education, a real start. A clean break." I could hear the unsaid words hanging in the air. Sell the ghost, take the money, and disappear. Become someone else's problem, or better yet, no one's. "We get a bus ticket," I stated, finally picking up the envelope. It was flimsy. Inside I could feel the stiff rectangle of a debit card, probably loaded with a few $100s of transitional funds and some papers. A bus ticket and a recommendation to sell the only thing we have left of our family? It's a pragmatic solution, Chloe. Pragmatism felt a lot like abandonment. I stood up, the plastic chair groaning in protest. Maya stood with me, a perfect, defiant echo. We were a unit. We'd had to be. In a world of rotating caseworkers and temporary roommates, we were the only constant. Her small hand found mine, her fingers cold, but strong. "Where is it?" I asked. Mr. Henderson consulted a file. "Blackwood Creek. It's rural. About 5 hours east of here, near the Deschutes National Forest. The bus will take you to the nearest town, Pine Ridge. From there, it's another 10 miles. I've arranged a car service to take you the final stretch." He said it like he was giving directions to another planet. And maybe he was. We were city kids, forged in concrete and noise. The idea of a place where the nearest town was 10 miles away was terrifying. But the idea of staying in another group home, separated because of our ages, was worse. This was our one slender chance to stay together. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Henderson," I said, the formal words tasting like ash in my mouth. He looked surprised, as if he'd expected a fight, tears, a scene. But we had learned long ago that scenes were a luxury we couldn't afford. They only ever made things worse. We walked out of the office, my hand clutching the envelope, Maya's hand clutching mine. The hallway smelled of bleach and institutional despair. We didn't look back. We never looked back. That was the first rule of survival. The bus ride was a long, humming purgatory. We sat with our foreheads pressed against the cool glass, watching the city blur and then dissolve into sprawling suburbs, which in turn melted into wide, open farmland. The sky grew bigger, a vast, indifferent blue. Maya had her headphones on, but I knew she wasn't listening to music. It was her shield, a way to build a wall of privacy in a world that offered none. I spent the hours staring at the envelope in my lap. It felt both impossibly heavy and terrifyingly light. Inside was the sum total of our future: a bus ticket, a debit card with $500 on it, and a deed to a place we'd never seen, left by a woman we barely knew. Every rumble of the bus felt like a punctuation mark at the end of a chapter I was desperate to close. 2 years in the Northgate group home, 3 years at Elm Street before that, 4 years of foster placements that fell through like rotten floorboards. 9 years of being a file, a case number, a problem to be managed. Now, the problem was being relocated. The lawyer's name was on a piece of paper stapled to the deed: Arthur Abernathy. His office had sent the documents to the state. He was the executor of the will. I wondered what he was like. I pictured another Mr. Henderson, another man with a tired sigh and pragmatic solutions. "You think it's real?" Maya's voice was a whisper, so quiet I almost missed it. She'd taken off her headphones. Her dark eyes were fixed on the blur of pine trees that had begun to line the highway. "The land? The house?" "The state wouldn't send us to a place that doesn't exist." I was trying to sound confident, like the 16-year-old trustee I was supposed to be. "No," she said. "The being free part." I didn't have an answer for that. Freedom felt like a concept from a book, not something that could apply to us. Our lives had been scheduled, monitored, and documented down to the minute. What did you do with a day that was entirely your own? What did you do with a whole life? The bus hissed to a stop in Pine Ridge. The town was little more than a single main street with a gas station, a general store, and a diner with a buzzing neon sign that read, "Eat." The air smelled different here. Clean, sharp, with the scent of pine and damp earth. A black sedan was waiting, just as Mr. Henderson had promised. The driver was a stout man with a kind face and a flannel shirt. He didn't ask any questions, just loaded our 2 duffel bags into the trunk. "Blackwood Creek?" he asked. I nodded, and we got in. The final 10 miles were on a winding dirt road. The trees grew thicker, their branches forming a canopy over us. Sunlight dappled the dusty dashboard. It was beautiful and intimidating. The car turned onto a smaller, even more overgrown lane. A faded wooden sign, half swallowed by ivy, read, "Blackwood," And then we were there. The driver pulled to a stop in front of a gate hanging crookedly from a single hinge. Beyond it, a long, weed-choked driveway led to a house that seemed to be actively surrendering to the forest. It was a two-story farmhouse, once white, now a peeling gray. The porch sagged. Windows were boarded up. It wasn't just in disrepair, it was a ruin. My heart sank. This was it. This was the viable alternative. A 10-acre plot of wilderness with a derelict house at its center. Mr. Henderson's advice to sell echoed in my ears. It wasn't pragmatic advice. It was the only sane option. The driver got out and opened the trunk. He set our bags on the ground. "This is it," he said, his voice gentle. He looked from the house to our faces, and I saw a flicker of pity in his eyes. "Keys are under the river rock by the porch steps. The one that looks like a heart. Eleanor always left it there." He knew her name. He knew her habit. For the first time, our grandmother felt like a real person. "Thank you," I managed to say. He nodded, got back in his car, and drove away, leaving us in a cloud of dust and profound silence. The only sound was the rustle of the wind in the towering pines. For a long moment, we just stood there, two small figures at the edge of a forgotten world. This was our inheritance. A broken gate, a dying house, and 10 acres of silence. "Well," Maya said, her voice small, "it's big." I tried to laugh, but it came out as a choked sob. I squeezed my eyes shut, the familiar sting of hopelessness rising in my throat. This was a mistake, a cruel joke. We should have taken the money. "Hey." Maya's hand was on my arm. "We're together. That's what matters." She was right. She was always right about the things that mattered. I took a deep breath, the pine-scented air clearing my head just a little. "Okay," I said. "Okay. Let's find that key." We found the heart-shaped rock, and underneath it, a tarnished brass key. The lock on the front door was stiff with rust. It took both of us, our hands over mine, to turn it. The door swung open with a long, mournful creak, revealing a dark interior thick with the smell of dust, damp, and time. The inside of the house was a time capsule. Furniture was draped in white sheets like a congregation of ghosts. Dust motes danced in the single beam of light slanting from a crack in a boarded-up window. It was clear no one had lived here for a very long time. We walked through the downstairs rooms in silence. A living room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen with archaic appliances, a small dining room. Everything was coated in a thick layer of dust. "It's like a museum," Maya whispered, her voice full of awe. "A museum of sadness." A dry, unexpected laugh escaped me. "Yeah, or a horror movie." But it wasn't scary. It was just still. It was a place where time had stopped. Upstairs, we found two small bedrooms, their beds stripped bare. In one, a child's room, faded wallpaper with cartoon rockets peeled from the wall. Our father's room, maybe? The thought was a dull ache. There was so much we didn't know. We spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the property. The 10 acres were mostly wild forest, thick with undergrowth. Behind the house, there was a collapsed garden shed and the remnants of an old apple orchard. And then we saw it. Set back from the house, at the edge of a clearing, was the stable. It was in even worse shape than the house. The roof sagged dangerously in the middle, and half the siding had rotted away, leaving its skeletal framework exposed. It looked like one strong gust of wind would bring the whole thing down. "Probably full of raccoons," Maya said, wrinkling her nose. "Probably," I agreed, but I was drawn to it. Unlike the house, which felt sealed and silent. The stable felt like it still had a story to tell. We circled it cautiously. The large double doors were swollen shut, but a smaller side door was ajar. I pushed it open. The interior was dark and smelled powerfully of hay, earth, and decay. Light filtered in through the gaps in the walls, striping the dusty air. There were 4 stalls, their doors hanging from broken hinges. Cobwebs as thick as cotton candy draped from the rafters. In the center of the dirt floor, something was catching the light. I took a step inside, my sneakers crunching on dried leaves and debris. Maya followed close behind. It was a metal ring, flush with the ground. A handle. It was set into a large, square wooden door that I hadn't even registered as being there. It was so covered in dirt and old hay that it blended in perfectly with the floor. A trap door. My heart started to beat a little faster. I knelt down and brushed away the debris. The wood was thick and heavy. The trapdoor was about 4 feet square, with a heavy-duty iron ring in the center. Along one edge, I saw the glint of metal. A padlock. A big, rusty, industrial-looking padlock. "What is it?" Maya knelt beside me. "I don't know," I breathed. "A cellar?" "Stables don't usually have cellars," she said, ever the pragmatist. She was right. This was something else. Why would anyone lock a cellar in a dilapidated barn? I pulled on the ring. The door didn't budge. I pulled on the padlock. It was solid. "We need to get this open," I said. The feeling was overwhelming, a sudden, urgent certainty. The house was a decoy. The overgrown land was a distraction. This was what mattered. We spent the next hour trying to break the lock. We found a rusty tire iron in the corner of the stable and tried to pry it open. We tried smashing it with a large rock. The lock, old and rusted as it was, held firm. It was as if it was guarding something vital. "It's no use," Maya said, sitting back on her heels, her face smudged with dirt. "We'll have to come back with bolt cutters or something." Disappointment washed over me. She was right, but I felt a desperate need to know what was down there. It felt like the first real question I had been given, in a life full of answers I didn't want. As I stood up, my foot kicked something in the loose dirt. I bent down and picked it up. It was a key. Small, intricate, and just as rusted as the padlock. It hadn't been with the house key. It had been here, in the dirt, just a few feet from the door it was meant to open. As if it had been dropped in a hurry, or left for someone to find. My hand was shaking as I fit the key into the padlock. It was stiff. I had to jiggle it, push it hard. For a second, I thought it wouldn't work. Then, with a grating click that echoed in the silent barn, the lock sprang open. I looked at Maya. Her eyes were wide. We both held our breath. I lifted the heavy padlock off the hasp. I grabbed the iron ring with both hands and pulled. The wooden door was incredibly heavy. It lifted with a groan of protesting wood, releasing a gust of cool, dry air that smelled of paper and ozone and something else. Something clean. Below us, a set of steep wooden steps led down into darkness. It wasn't a root cellar. The air was wrong. It wasn't damp or earthy. "You have a flashlight on your phone?" I whispered. Maya nodded, her face pale in the gloom. She fumbled in her pocket and switched on her phone's light. She aimed the beam down into the opening. The light cut through the blackness, revealing not a dirt-walled cellar, but a small, perfectly constructed room. The walls were paneled with wood. There was a simple wooden desk and chair. On the desk, a thick, leather-bound journal sat next to a small metal box. Against the far wall was a series of shelves, and on those shelves were dozens of identical, neatly labeled boxes. It wasn't a cellar. It was an office, a bunker, a secret. I took the first step down. The wooden stair creaked under my weight. The air was cool and still, a world away from the decaying stable above. I felt like I was descending into a tomb or a treasure chest. Maybe they were the same thing. Maya followed me down, her phone light dancing across the walls. The room was small, no more than 10 by 10 feet, but it was meticulous. The wood-paneled walls were clean, the floor was swept. A single, bare bulb hung from the ceiling, a pull chain dangling from it. I reached up and pulled the chain. With a click, the room was flooded with a warm, yellow light. The bulb was powered by a thick cable that ran up through the ceiling. This room had electricity. It was self-contained, protected. My gaze was drawn back to the desk, the journal, the metal box. I walked over and ran my fingers over the worn leather of the journal. It was embossed with a single initial, E, for Eleanor. "Chloe," Maya said, her voice hushed. She was pointing at the shelves. I walked over and looked at the labels on the boxes. They were dates, years, starting 9 years ago, the year our parents died, the year we went into the system. My hands were trembling again. I pulled down the first box. It was a simple cardboard archive box. The label read, Year 1. I lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of letters tied with string, bank statements, photographs. I picked up the top letter. It was on pale blue stationery, her handwriting a neat, elegant script. It was addressed to me. To Chloe, age 7. "My dearest Chloe," it began. "If you are reading this, it means that I have failed in my primary task, which was to stay alive long enough to give this to you myself. And for that, I am more sorry than you will ever know." I sank into the wooden chair, the letter shaking in my hand. Maya came and stood behind me, her hands on my shoulders, reading over me. The letters told a story we had never known. A story that had been happening in parallel to our own. A secret history running beneath the surface of our lives. Our grandmother, Eleanor, had not been unwell. She had not been unstable. She had been threatened. Our father, her son, had fallen into debt with dangerous people before he died. After the accident, those people came looking for their money. They saw the life insurance payout, the house, the 2 young orphan girls, as a resource. A way to collect. They had threatened Eleanor. They told her if she took us in, they would come for us. They would leverage us to get what they believed they were owed. So she made a choice. A terrible, impossible choice. "To protect you, I had to let you go," she wrote. "I had to become a ghost. I told the court I was unfit. I let them paint me as a heartbroken, unstable old woman. It was the hardest thing I have ever done, watching you walk away with a stranger, your small face so confused. It broke my heart into 1,000 pieces, a pain I have carried every single day since." She hadn't abandoned us. She had hidden us in plain sight, in the one place her son's creditors would never think to look. The state foster care system. She made herself small and invisible, sold her house in the city, and bought this remote, forgotten piece of land under a different name. This bunker, this room, was her command center. I opened the metal box on the desk. Inside was a stack of cassette tapes, each labeled with a date. An old, portable cassette player sat next to them. I picked up the first tape, slid it into the player, and pressed play. Her voice filled the small room. It was older, a little raspy, but clear and strong. It was the voice from my youngest, most fragile memories. The voice that smelled like lavender and cinnamon. "Tape 1, her voice crackled. "It feels foolish, talking to a machine. But I need you to hear my voice. I need you to know I was here. All of it. The money from your father's life insurance. I couldn't let them have it. I put it in a trust. This land, this house, it's all in the trust. I've been paying the taxes, just enough to keep the county from seizing it. but letting it seem delinquent enough that no one would look too closely. It had to look abandoned. It had to look worthless. Maya pulled down another box from the shelf. Year 2. Inside, more letters. School photographs of me with a missing front tooth. A picture of Maya at her first communion, which Eleanor must have gotten from a sympathetic social worker or paid someone to acquire. She had been watching. She had never stopped watching. In another box, we found financial statements. She had been investing the insurance money, slowly, carefully, growing it over the years. She'd lived here, in this tiny room, subsisting on almost nothing, pouring every penny and every ounce of her energy into building a future for us. The developers have been sniffing around for years, her voice said on another tape. They want this land. It's close to the forest, perfect for luxury cabins. Their offers will be tempting. They will offer you what seems like a fortune. Do not sell. Not yet. This land is more than just acres, girls. It's a fortress. She explained the legal labyrinth she had constructed. The property was an agricultural trust. As long as it was producing something, even on a small scale, it was protected from certain types of seizure and eminent domain. It had immense tax benefits, but it had to be a working farm. In the box for year 9, her voice guided us, you will find my business plan. We scrambled for the box. Inside, beneath letters telling us how proud she was, how much she loved us, was a detailed proposal, a plan for a small-scale organic farm, specializing in heirloom vegetables and artisanal products, a farm-to-table delivery service for the wealthy vacation homes on the other side of the county. There were market analyses, startup cost projections, even potential client lists. And at the bottom of the box, in vacuum-sealed bags, was cash. Tens of thousands of dollars. Startup capital. This was my dream for you, her voice concluded on the last tape. Not to be rich, but to be independent. To have a place that is yours, that no one can take from you. To build something with your own 2 hands. It is a hard path I have laid out for you. The easy path is to sell, to take the money and run. I will not blame you if you choose it, but I pray you choose this. I pray you choose home. The tape ended. The only sound in the room was the quiet hiss of the player and my own ragged breathing. I looked at Maya. Tears were streaming down her face, silent and steady. I was crying too. I hadn't even realized it. I cried for the grandmother I had resented for abandoning us. I cried for the woman who had lived in a hole in the ground for 9 years, watching us from afar. I cried for the lost years, for the Christmases and birthdays we'd spent with strangers. I cried for her sacrifice, so total and so secret that it was almost unbearable to comprehend. She hadn't abandoned us. She had been our guardian angel, our secret warrior, fighting a battle we didn't even know existed. The weight of it all settled on me, heavy as the trapdoor above. This wasn't just a property. It was a promise, a legacy, a final, desperate act of love. And it was ours now. The responsibility felt immense, crushing. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a shrill, alien sound in the sanctity of this room. I fumbled for it. The screen read, "Unknown number." I almost ignored it, but some instinct made me answer. "Chloe, this is Arthur Abernathy. I was your grandmother's attorney." His voice was calm, professional, exactly as I had pictured. "Mr. Abernathy," I said, my voice hoarse. "I'm calling because I've just received a formal offer for the Blackwood Creek property, a development firm. It's a very generous offer, Chloe. $750,000. After settling the back taxes and my fees, you and your sister would walk away with nearly $300,000 each." There it was. The easy path. The clean break Mr. Henderson had talked about. $300,000. It was an impossible number, a fairy tale amount of money. We could go anywhere, do anything. We could get an apartment in the city, go to college, never look back. We could be normal. They need an answer quickly, Mr. Abernathy continued. These developers don't like to wait. I've taken the liberty of drawing up the preliminary paperwork. All you'd need to do is sign. It's the smart move, Chloe. The land is worthless. The house is a teardown. Take the money. It's what anyone would advise. I looked around the small, perfect room. I looked at the shelves full of letters, a 9-year testament to a love so fierce it had literally gone underground. I looked at Maya, her face stained with tears, but her eyes clear and steady. She was watching me, waiting. What anyone would advise. But our grandmother wasn't anyone, and we weren't just anyone's kids. We were Eleanor Vance's granddaughters. And this is the part of the story where everything could have gone a different way. If you've made it this far, maybe you know what it feels like to stand at a crossroads like that. A moment where you have to choose between the easy path and the right one. It's a lonely place to be. If I read every single one, and I want you to know this community is a place where those hard choices are understood. You're not just a viewer to me. You're part of this journey. Chloe? Are you there? Mr. Abernathy's voice crackled over the phone. I took a breath. We're not selling, I said. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I don't think you understand. This is a life-changing amount of money. I understand perfectly, I said, and my voice didn't tremble this time. It was as solid as the ground beneath my feet. The property is not for sale. It is going to be a working farm. There was another, longer pause. Then, for the first time, the professional calm in Mr. Abernathy's voice cracked, just a little. A hint of something else came through. Was it warmth? A working farm, he repeated slowly. He sighed, but it wasn't a tired, Henderson-style sigh. It was different. It sounded like relief. Your grandmother she would be so incredibly proud. She always hoped you'd choose the hard path. She said you were strong enough for it. He knew. He had to have known about this room, about the plan. He was part of it, another secret soldier in Eleanor's army. The offer from the developers, I asked. Was it real? Oh, it's real, he said. And they're not going to be happy. They've been trying to get that land for a decade. They'll likely put pressure on you. But Eleanor planned for that too. The trust is ironclad, as long as you meet the agricultural use requirements within 18 months. I'll send you the details. Call me if you need anything. Anything at all. He hung up. I slid my phone back into my pocket. The silence returned, but it was different now. It was filled with purpose. I looked at Maya. A slow smile spread across her face. A working farm? She said. You don't know the first thing about farming. Neither do you, I shot back. But Grandma left instructions. I gestured to the shelves, to the boxes, to the meticulous 9-year plan for our survival. We're not alone in this. She's here. That night, we didn't sleep in the dusty, ghost-filled house. We brought down our sleeping bags and pillows from our duffel bags and slept on the floor of the bunker. The single bare bulb cast a warm, safe glow. For the first time in 9 years, I didn't feel temporary. I didn't feel like a guest in someone else's life. I felt like I was home. It wasn't a place we had been given. It was a place we had found. A place we had to earn. The next morning, we woke up with the sun and began our new life. The first few months were the hardest. The work was backbreaking. We started with the stable. We had to make it safe before we could even think about the land. We cleared out decades of debris. We used some of the cash from the box to buy lumber, roofing materials, and tools from the general store in Pine Ridge. The store owner, a man named George with a face like a weathered map, looked at us, two teenage girls buying shingles and bags of cement mix, with skepticism. "Big project you got there," he said, leaning on the counter. "We're rebuilding," I said simply. He nodded slowly, his eyes lingering on us. "You're Eleanor's girls, aren't you? You've got her eyes." The casual mention of her name, the connection to this place, sent a jolt through me. "You knew her?" "Everyone knew Eleanor," he said. "Quiet woman, kept to herself. Used to buy a lot of canned goods and books. We all figured she was just a recluse. Never knew she had family." He looked out the window toward the hills. "Glad to see the place is getting some life back. It's been quiet too long." That small exchange was a turning point. We weren't just anonymous kids anymore. We were Eleanor's girls. We had a history here, even if we were just learning it. Slowly, painstakingly, we brought the stable back from the brink. We replaced rotten timbers, patched the roof, and rebuilt the stall doors. We transformed the decaying structure into a clean, functional barn. It wasn't just about having a usable space. It was about reversing the neglect. It was an act of love, a way of saying thank you to the woman who had sacrificed everything for us. Next, we tackled the land. We followed our grandmother's plan to the letter. We had the soil tested. We ordered heirloom seeds from the catalogs she'd left for us. We rented a rototiller and turned the earth in the field behind the stable, the field that had been choked with weeds just months before. Our bodies ached in ways we never knew they could. Our hands were calloused and raw. But every evening, we would sit on the porch of the house, which we were slowly cleaning and repairing room by room, and look at the neat rows of dark, turned earth. We had done that. We had made that. We lived frugally, using the cash Eleanor had left us only for essential supplies. We learned to cook on the old wood stove in the kitchen, to patch our own clothes, to be resourceful in a way that life in the system had never required. The bunker became our sanctuary and our office. Every night, we'd go down there, review our grandmother's notes, plan the next day's work, and read her letters. They were a constant source of strength and guidance. She had foreseen so many of the challenges, and for those she hadn't, her words of encouragement were enough. "You will be tired," she wrote in one letter. "You will feel like giving up. There will be days when selling seems like the only logical choice. On those days, I want you to walk to the edge of the woods and listen. Just listen to the wind in the pines. That is the sound of your freedom. It is the sound of a life you have built for yourselves. And there is no amount of money in the world that can buy that." The developers didn't give up easily. We got letters from their lawyers, full of legal threats and escalating offers. Men in suits showed up at our gate, their city cars looking absurd on the dirt road. They talked about zoning violations, about the county condemning the property. I met them at the gate every time, Maya standing silently beside me. I was 16, then 17, a kid in muddy boots telling a corporate lawyer that he was trespassing. But I wasn't just a kid. I was the trustee of the Blackwood Creek Agricultural Trust. I had Mr. Abernathy on speed dial. I had my grandmother's ironclad will at my back. And I had a right to be here. Eventually, they stopped coming. Our first victory was small. A row of radishes, bright red and perfect, pushing up through the dark soil. Maya pulled the first one from the ground, holding it up like a ruby. We washed it under the pump and split it in half. It tasted of earth and spice and sunshine. It tasted like hope. Soon, other things began to grow. Lettuce, kale, tomatoes, squash. Our field, once a symbol of neglect, was now a riot of green. We started making deliveries, just as the plan outlined. We loaded up the old pickup truck we'd bought and repaired, and I drove our boxes of fresh vegetables to the restaurants and resorts on the other side of the mountains. At first, they were skeptical. but the quality of our produce spoke for itself. Orders grew. We were a working farm. We had met the terms of the trust. We had won. A year after we arrived, on the anniversary of finding the bunker, we held a small ceremony. We went down into the room, which now served as the nerve center of our small but growing business. We had a new computer on the desk, but we'd kept the journal and the cassette player right next to it. We read the first letter Eleanor had written, the one that had broken our hearts and then rebuilt them. "My dearest Chloe," it began. This time, we didn't cry. We smiled. We had fulfilled her prayer. We had chosen the harder path. We had chosen home. Looking back now, it's hard to believe how far we've come. It's been 5 years since that day. I'm 21 and Maya is 19. The farm is thriving. We have 2 part-time employees now, kids from town. We've expanded, adding chickens for eggs and a small apiary for honey. The house is no longer a ruin. It's our home, filled with light and laughter and the smell of whatever Maya is cooking. The stable is strong and sturdy, and the bunker beneath it is still our quiet place, a reminder of where we came from and the love that guided us here. We never sold. We never will. This land isn't just a place to live or a business. It's a living monument to our grandmother. Her sacrifice is in the soil, in the strong beams of the barn, in the sunlight that falls on the fields. We are her legacy. Sometimes, when the work is done for the day, I walk to the edge of the woods and I listen to the wind in the pines. And she's right. It's the sound of freedom. It's the sound of a life we built ourselves, on a foundation of secret, radical love. The system that ejected us thought it was giving us a problem to solve. A dilapidated house, delinquent taxes, a broken past. They told us to liquidate, to erase it, to take the easy money. But what looked like a burden was actually a blueprint. What looked like an ending was the beginning of everything. Our grandmother didn't leave us a property. She left us a second chance. She gave us the tools not just to survive, but to build, to grow, to heal. And in that locked room, buried beneath the weight of the world, we found more than just a plan. We found our purpose. We found our way back to family. So I want to leave you with this. The world might tell you that your inheritance is a burden. It might tell you that the broken things from your past are best left behind, sold off, and forgotten. But sometimes, the most valuable things are the ones that require work. Sometimes, the deepest love is hidden in the hardest choices. And sometimes, the place you are meant to be is a place you have to build with your own 2 hands. Thank you for listening to our story. If it resonated with you, if you've ever had to fight for your home, for your family, and below, what did this story teach you about the meaning of inheritance? I promise, we're listening, because every story of survival deserves